But today, believe it or not, marks 2 years from Britain's withdrawal from Afghanistan following NATO's 20 years in the country.
Well, dozens of countries evacuated their forces from the country after the Taliban retook the capital, Kabul.
Well, let's talk to Veterans campaigner Trevor Coult, who fought in Afghanistan. Good to see you this morning, Trevor. I mean, it was such a disheartening thing when that withdrawal took place. I mean, particularly for a lot of the veterans and the families of those who died in Afghanistan, just to see us walk away. I mean, where do you think we are 2 years on?
We're nowhere, really, Stephen and Ellie. We went backwards. You have to remember that we were invited by the president of Afghanistan to come over and help him defeat the Taliban at the start. So we went there to help them out, and in the end, we handed it back to them. Now, while we were in Afghanistan, I can assure you that every single person that we caught, we had captured, that had killed British soldiers, who had killed our allies, never got prosecuted anyway. The Afghan authorities did not recognise biometrics. They didn't recognise iris scans and fingerprints. So even though we had all the proper things put down to put these people in jail for years, every time they went through the Afghan authorities, they were released. So I hate to say it, but I lost some good friends out there. But, you know, I do sort of think it was a complete waste of time. We've lost so many people out there, and for what?
And what do you think when you look back at the extraction, the international withdrawal from Afghanistan? I mean, most would agree that it was an absolute disaster in terms of planning and in terms of execution. We're just seeing some videos there of the desperate people trying to scale the walls of Kabul airport. We all remember those scenes, don't we? And people desperately clinging to aircraft trying to take off. What are your reflections now about the actual withdrawal?
Well, let's be honest, was it 13 or 14 US Marines were killed during the extraction? And that was all down to the President of the United States, who actually had did an underhand deal with the Taliban and didn't actually tell any of his allies. And we're meant to be his best ally. Oh, the UK, you know, we're like that. No, it was a complete cluster. I won't use the other word, but he destroyed it. I've never known in my whole time for a country to keep a secret and not tell its friends and allies, we're about to leave, don't tell the British. Do you know what I mean? It was a disgrace. And if I'm honest, I said this to your producer yesterday, I don't understand why the UK works so closely with the US. I mean, I'm going to be honest, we have great intelligence, we have great soldiers, we have great abilities, we don't need them, and it's about time we stood on our own 2 feet and we said, to hell with the US after the way it's treated us.
I mean, I guess the problem is when you look at something like Afghanistan, that it's about the numbers, isn't it? And we aren't strong enough, are we, as an armed forces? Now, we know the armed forces numbers are so down at the moment, and resources and financial backing is low. I mean, it really needs to be lifted. We are in a position where we just can't operate on our own, can we?
Stephen, that's a great point, but we would be able to operate on our own if our peers in the House of Lords and our politicians would let us. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen our politicians deliberately dwindle away our armed forces in order to keep us in this new fancy European Union type military defence. So we are deliberately dwindling away our armed forces. We are cutting away regiments still. I mean, thousands of regiments being cut away, being amalgamated. Our own politicians are ruining our country.
Trevor, when you look at Afghanistan now as a country, especially when you think of women and young girls in that country, how does that make you feel? Because you obviously served there. Do you feel as though in that time you made a difference? Or do you feel as though that was all a waste looking back?
Well, Ellie, when we were there, we were making a difference. When we were there, we provided security, we provided assistance. We helped build schools. We helped build hundreds of wells. We brought over products, pencils, pens, calculators. We helped these young girls find an education, get an education. And the minute President Biden pulled out, the Taliban took over, and all these things that women and young girls were aspiring to be got cancelled. So, and I find it quite strange, actually, that in today's woke culture, where feminists are jumping all over the back of every man that wants to speak out, there's no feminists jumping out at the minute and saying about these young girls. Not a single feminist has jumped out and said, what about the girls of Afghanistan? Because it doesn't suit their agenda, Ellie.
No, well, it's all very troubling, isn't it? The final point, as you know as well as I do, 454 people, British people, lost their lives from 2001 onwards in Afghanistan. It's important. I mean, I know you say, why were we there? What difference did it really make in the long term? But it's important, isn't it, not to think that these people died in vain fighting for Queen and country.
Stephen, it's very hard not to think like that, though, when you look. And the one thing which we don't talk about is we've actually lost over 1,000 veterans from suicide because of the trauma they gained in Afghanistan. So we forget about that as well. But yes, it's a hard pill to swallow to think, let's not think of them in vain. But, the way things are going today, it's hard not to, Stephen.